Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chris Chapman, President of the International Institute of Communications, and it's my great honour to welcome you all to the IIC's 2022 Asia Telecommunication and Media Forum. Over 30 countries have registered to attend this forum over the next few days, and that's a very encouraging development, including attendees from Africa, Europe, and the Americas. As always with the IIC's Telecommunication and Media Forums, TMFs, as we call them, we address highly topical themes and from a variety of perspectives. Not only do you have the opportunity to hear those perspectives, but also to ask questions of the panelists. Instructions on how to do that will pop up on your screen during each session. So please do take the opportunity to submit those questions and work on the nuances of these discussions. Constructive contestability is what it's all about. We're also very pleased to present keynote speakers from two of our industry members. Later today, we'll hear from Håkon Broseth-Schule, the Senior Vice President and Head of External Relations Asia for the Telenor Group. And tomorrow I'll be in conversation with Scott Beaumont, the President for Asia Pacific of Google. Today's panels will focus on progress with the ASEAN Digital Master Plan, the status of 5G network deployment, and last but by no means least, the green agenda and the digital ecosystems sector sustainability targets. I now welcome and hand over to Grant Forsyth, our partner at Plum Consulting, indeed a man of vast international experience and a great friend of the IIC. Over to you, Grant.
Thank you, Chris. And I'd like to extend my thanks to the IIC for inviting me to chair this panel. As Chris says, I have had a long association with the IIC and take every opportunity to recommend its conferences and sessions to colleagues and friends. And it's great to see the IIC continuing its delivery of quality sessions through these virtual sessions. Today, on this panel, we have four great panelists joining us. I will introduce each of these panelists as they go through their introductory remarks. And they're going to be speaking in the order that you see here. What I'd just like to do is to go through 4 points. One is the how Plum Consulting became engaged with the development of the ADM 2025, talk about the strategic vision and the application of our approach to developing ADM 2025, and then the 8 desired outcomes. Okay, great. So, as I was saying, Plum Consulting was involved in the development of the ADM 2025. ADM 2025 is the third of the ASEAN master plans. The first two, the AIM, ASEAN ICT Master Plan 2015 and 2020, were for 5 years. And then the third one, we changed its name to the Digital Master Plan. The development of the ADM 2025 was led by MCMC from Malaysia, given that they were the host country and leaders of the ASEAN Digital Ministers and ASEAN Digital Senior Officers. A framework for the master plan had already been developed across ASEAN and adopted prior to the commencement of the project. So we took up that master plan, or that framework, and work from there. We noted the originally conceived program was to be developed and had to be changed, obviously, due to COVID, but we carried on. This then is the vision that was adopted, that was created in the first framework. So the vision we adopted, ASEAN as a leading digital community and economic bloc, powered by secure and transformative digital services, technologies, and ecosystems. And our first task was to visualize what that vision would look like if it was to be successfully achieved. And we set up 4 views. One, a societal view, in which everyone in ASEAN is using digital services to enhance their daily lives. Next, to look at the individual member state economies, in which businesses, large and small, would use digital services to make themselves more productive. Then also look across the region and to see that the region as a whole made good use of digital services. And lastly, but not obviously the least, is to look at the ASEAN economy. There were kind of 3 key contexts in which we had to set the ASEAN master plan. They being the climate change, technology trends, and COVID-19 pandemic. These 3 contexts, of course, were global and were outside the influence and control of ASEAN. So having determined the strategy and adopted the vision, we were mindful of finding a way of the review of the previous ADM or AIM 2020. We wanted to ensure that the learnings from that 5-year plan were adopted in our development of the ADM 2025, and to make it as robust as possible and evidence-based. So having adopted the vision, we then determined that the next thing to do was to determine outcomes, things that you can shake a stick at. And so we developed what in the end became the 8 desired outcomes. And for each of those outcomes, we developed a set of enabling actions. And then for each of those, we developed more detailed plans, timelines, monitoring guidelines, etc. So these then were the 8 desired outcomes that were eventually developed and adopted within the plan. I can tell you that this was done through a range of consultations across the member states, and we very much benefited from the ability to have multiple calls and written responses back from the member states in developing and refining our set of desired outcomes. So that then is the heart, if you will, of ADM 2025. And I just wanted to take the opportunity of setting the core of ADM 2025, because I know that our next speaker, Mr. Natasuntong, will go into more detail as to the plan. So let me stop sharing my slides. Our next speaker is Mr. Natasuntong. He has spent many years as a senior executive level in the Ministry of Industry, including Deputy Permanent Secretary. He gained his PhD in Industrial Engineering and Master of Science in Civil Engineering from the Oregon State University. He is presently the Acting Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Digital Economy and Society in Thailand. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. And a very good morning to all participants and panelists. It's a great pleasure and honor for me to join as a panelist sharing regional digital development and discussing among relevant stakeholders in the IIC Annual Asian Telecommunication and Media Forum, which is held virtually today. This event is of great importance to all stakeholders involved in moving forward digital transformation. It is the backbone of the global and regional economic growth. My presentation today will highlight in 3 key issues. The first one is about the overview of ASEAN Digital Master Plan 2025. The next agenda will be on the regional digital development in different dimensions, including COVID-19 recovery, connectivity infrastructure, innovation development, and also data protection and cyber security. The last one is our next step for 2022 initiative. Let's move on the first one. The first agenda, the ASEAN Digital Master Plan 2025 or ADM 2025 was successfully adopted at the first ASEAN Digital Minister meeting in 2021. This timely and proactive approach to policy shaping ASEAN to digital community and economic bloc driven by digital service and technology. The ADM 2025, as Mr. Grant described, has set out prioritized action for implementation, such as to speed up the ASEAN recovery from COVID-19, and also to encourage inward investment in digital and ICT, to harmonize digital regulation to facilitate cross-border data flow, and also to promote development and advanced digital skills. According to this priority, we have put forward a variety of solid regulatory framework and also guideline and strategy to build a balanced, secure, and inclusive digital ecosystem in ASEAN. In response to COVID-19 pandemic since 2020, ASEAN country has optimized development of digital solution to fight the pandemic. A number of COVID-19 applications have been launched in many countries, such as Vietnam. They also have application for the care Vietnamese people health status. In Laos, they also have application with screening the application for COVID-19. Malaysia, they also have an application for COVID-19. And in Thailand, we have an application called Mopom, which is created to facilitate access to COVID-19 service, including vaccination record, laboratory result, and verify COVID-19 digital health pass. Apart from digital solution tackling the COVID-19, ASEAN members also have created various digital platforms for their business activity, especially in e-commerce platform, digital service, digital tool in government sector, such as electronic signature, electronic invoicing, and digital ID. For public service, many countries are developing government data center and cloud service, which is a platform embedded in IoT and artificial intelligence, benefit both private sector and people from open data access to improve their efficiency, capability, and quality of life. To ensure adequate and effectiveness connectivity across ASEAN, making both steps toward digital ASEAN, all ASEAN members have begun their 5G journey. Recently, ASEAN has conducted a study on development of best practice for 5G development in ASEAN. This study aims to deliver a comprehensive approach, assisting ASEAN member states in 5G introduction and implementation through a both in-country and cross-border 5G ecosystem development. The study report also showed that 5G promised to support a wide range of use cases, especially manufacturing, health, and agriculture. In Thailand, we use 5G in many areas, such as smart hospital, smart city, and also we use 5G to improve our agriculture efficiency also. We use 5G to collect data, analyze, and also include the sensor in agriculture to make the production of our farmer to be more effective. We expect that the number of 5G subscription in ASEAN will exceed 200 million in 2025. Following the ATM 2025, all ASEAN governments take their active role in promoting innovation development to maximizing the benefit of digital technology, particularly cloud computing, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, data analytics, and blockchain. Last month, ASEAN completed a study on ASEAN strategy guidance for AI, which is primary aim for digital technology and related key sector policymakers to have an idea on how to enable the AI ecosystem for ASEAN member states, which they can benefit in many areas such as digital transformation, digital economy, or industry 4.0, as well as regional agenda by implementing AI. To ensure sustainable digital economy in ASEAN, we also take a primary focus on improving digital workforce to reskill, upskill, and new skill, and building digital literacy for people to gain new knowledge, which will enable them to move forward successful digital transformation. We expect that by 2025, more than 50% of workforce will need to reskill as the adoption of technology increase. Next slide, please. In 2021, the implementing guideline of the ASEAN Data Management Framework, or DMF, and the ASEAN Cross-Border Data Flow, or CBDF mechanism have been endorsed and are implemented on voluntary basis. The ASEAN DMF is a guideline for business, especially for SME, to put in place a data management system which will raise the knowledge and competence of ASEAN business in managing data and assist in complying with personal data protection requirements while enabling them to use the data for business growth. As a first step to implement the ASEAN CBDF mechanism is the development of ASEAN model contractual clause, or MMC, which are contractual terms and conditions that may be included in the binding legal agreement between parties transferring personal data to each other across border, regardless of whether they have data protection law. So as to promote ASEAN DMF and the MCC, a series of capacity building programs was held last year by Singapore to guide and build awareness among ASEAN member states and relevant stakeholders on their implementation. This initiative will raise ASEAN readiness to take up a new digital opportunity and foster trust, transparency, and accountability for the cross-border digital trade in ASEAN. Moreover, in the second ASEAN Digital Minister meeting last month, a launch of ASEAN Cyber Security Cooperation Strategy which is covered 2021 until 2025, which will build closer cooperation and coordination among relevant ASEAN sector bodies on cyber security, policy development, and capacity building initiatives, particularly strengthening cyber resilience and improving cyber capability among ASEAN member states. ASEAN digital sector also successfully completed the project on ASEAN Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Framework, which is a foundation for the first dimension. The study aimed to help ASEAN member states to identify national critical information infrastructure and provide strategic recommendation and coordinate approach to create more resilient cybersecurity across ASEAN. The framework recommendation comprise of 6 pillars that are: the first one is policy coordination. The second one is identifying critical information infrastructure. The third one is protecting critical information infrastructure. The fourth one is information sharing. The fifth one is incident response. And the last one is capacity building. Another important activity to support regional capacity building is the ASEAN-Japan Cybersecurity Capacity Building Center. The center aims to enhance cybersecurity capacity among ICT staff members of government agency and critical information infrastructure provider in ASEAN. Currently, the center delivers 734 ASEAN member state participants from 17 training session courses, including incident response, malware analysis, and network forensics. In order to continuously strengthen regional capacity building, the center is developing a new project, namely Project for Enhancing ASEAN-Japan Capacity Building Program for Cybersecurity and Trusted Digital Service, which aim to build the current expertise and experience and to improve capacity building service to ASEAN member states during 2023 until 2026. For this year, ASEAN has identified and prioritized 2022 work plan, which cover in many areas, such as capacity building to bridge the ASEAN digital divide in the post-COVID-19. The second one is to cover ASEAN guide on artificial intelligence, governance, and ethics. The third one is ASEAN action plan on promoting of digital initiative. And the last one is to establish of the standard to exchange data and information related to disaster in ASEAN region. So all of this development progress will be a concrete path to move toward a secure, inclusive, and sustainable digital economy and society in ASEAN. I should brief all of my 3 agenda for the ASEAN digital work plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nadaswamy. Our next speaker is CK Fung. CK is currently the group head of regulatory affairs, Axiata Group, Berhad. CK has about 25 years experience in the telecommunications with roles in regulatory, strategy and policy development, with prior experience in network engineering and project management. Over to you, CK.
Hi, thanks Grant, and thank you for having me on the panel today. Good morning and good afternoon to everybody. Thanks Grant for the kind introduction. I will jump straight into a couple of slides. I promise you it's not too many. I am the, call me CK, I'm the group head of regulatory affairs for Axiata Group, and what we are is actually we are a telecommunications group operating in 11 countries in Southeast Asia and Southeast Asia and South Asia. We are happy to be part of the conversation today, as we have been with IIC for past many years. And personally, I find this forum very open and very fruitful as a place for a frank exchange of ideas. So I'm happy to be back just to share our thoughts today on the topic of ASEAN Digital Master Plan. All right, it's a bit laggy, so I'll just go straight to some of the points that I want to talk about with you today. Basically, as a telecommunications operator in this region, we have a few, over the last couple of years, there has been a redefining of our goals and objectives in the marketplace. As all of us know, in the pandemic, most of us have moved on to an online world where business, e-commerce, learning, banking, finance, paying for bills, all have been forced online. And this has taken a tremendous load onto our networks, on the mobile networks in the many markets that we have businesses in. In fact, in some of the more developing markets, such as Cambodia, our consumers there are using broadband in such a fantastic way. It almost mirrors the consumption patterns of those consumers in more developed markets. So broadband is important. I think everybody has moved to that kind of way of working and living. And therefore, as mobile operators, our main task is actually to upgrade our networks to meet the demand. Yes, Petra, could you upload my slide space? Sorry, I'm having a bit difficulty with the lag. Thank you. Yes, for next slide. Yeah, next one, please. So, and this is of course because society and businesses are digitizing very fast. Even before COVID, digitizing is happening, but because of the phenomenon of the last couple of years, we've seen a huge increase, a burst of activity across our footprint. And in all the markets that we have businesses in, we see the similar challenges, right? Where be it in Bangladesh or Nepal or Malaysia or even Indonesia, everyone has the same trajectory of some sort. That means governments and policymakers racing to create policies and programs and initiatives just to encourage digitalization. And the fear is, of course, if you don't do enough, there'll be segments of society, for example, rural school children who will drop out from the education system, and that is a very real fear and real threat to society. So part of the ADM 2025, when it was first launched last year in January, we were quite excited. We were quite excited because we saw a framework document which was well structured. It had a very systematic way of addressing the issues, not just on traditional connectivity issues that we normally see ASEAN address, but also on the softer side, for example, on trust and cybersecurity and capacity building and adoption. So a lot of emphasis is spread into the softer side of the ecosystem, and we're happy to learn that it's there. The way ADM 2025 creates about 8 desired outcomes, right? Very clear goals of what it wants to achieve. And this is great because we see this journey tackling different topics happening individually in different countries. They do it all the same. They do the same path, do the same thing. So what ADM 2025 does, in our view, is actually puts a framework for ASEAN collaboration. So all countries in ASEAN, all member states, can learn from each other because some of us are on a bit more further ahead, some of us are still catching up. So it's good to be able to share best practices and initiatives and help each other so that we can work together as a regional community. So many things, for example, like the previous speakers talk about data governance, application services, other enablers. These are things that ASEAN as a bloc has to put in focus collectively to work to help each other. And as a telecom company, of course, broadband connectivity is our bread and butter. And though we have a burgeoning business in new business streams in digital infrastructure, I think it is also incumbent on us to be able to play a role to help digitization efforts, because we have the experience and know-how and expertise in building good infrastructure for broadband infrastructure for the consumers. So in Axiata, we actually have been talking about digital economy for quite a while. In 2019, about 2 or 3 years ago, we actually asked Analysis Mason to develop a framework to think about how digital economy fits into the ecosystem. Sorry, Petra, could you go on to one more slide? Yes, I think it is on this. So, and we wanted to map out what are the different parameters or factors that a good digital economy must be built upon. So of course we have the number one, connectivity platforms, digital infrastructure, which are things that we are quite well off. We're well known of, and we know that there are issues. But of course, other layers, for example, big data, digital identity, and of course, government, citizen, business interactions, all these things must also be addressed, put in place, so that the whole digital economy model is actually comprehensive and coherent. So this is actually quite mirrors what the framework helps us achieve in the ADM 2025. And I think we are happy as a company to support the ADM 2025 and work with policymakers across ASEAN to realize the goals of the ADM 2025. So with that, I think thank you very much for listening, and I hope to interact with you later on. Back to you, Grant. Thank you so much.
Thank you, CK. Our next speaker is Dr. Jasmine Begum. She is the Director of Legal, Government, Corporate Affairs, Malaysia and New Markets for Microsoft. Dr. Begum is based in KL and oversees corporate affairs, government relations and policy engagement for Microsoft businesses in Southeast Asia and emerging markets. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Grant, and let me share my screen. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share our perspectives today. And I think the speakers before me have shared in depth, especially Dr. Kunnathapan, who shared on the vision of ADM 2025, and my colleague CK too has shared on the vision and in relations to what is playing out in the region and where do we see the opportunity in actually realizing the ASEAN Digital Master Plan. The way we see it is that it presents us an opportunity to reset. Most of our countries in the region are looking at the starting point of resetting economy, and many of our countries, our governments and our economies are focused on ensuring that they start on a strong footing with digital economy. With that, the master plan provides us a great opportunity for us to actually streamline and start off with a look at how do we now use digital economy as a path to recovery. What we do see is technology as a platform, innovation as a culture, and I think all of the speakers before me have spoken about skilling, upskilling, and reskilling, and helping our organization, especially businesses, the MSMEs in our region, to have a resilient structure. I think while the master plan provides a broad spectrum of guidelines, I think we want to see how this is realized, especially for countries, for people, and most importantly for the vulnerable population. We are faced with a world seeking certainty. What we do see is the new business models that have emerged and limited agility, and all of the focus now with most of our countries looking to go into the endemic stage and looking at focusing on economic recovery. I do see an opportunity for us to focus on how do we now allow for our governments to build on this common master plan, for us to seize the opportunity to allow for this, what used to be the free flow of people and goods, for free flow of data, because that is going to be an important enabler for the recovery of our governments and our community. Realizing that the pandemic has accelerated the rise of the new economy, the new technologies across our region, we see contactless shopping, remote learning and development, telemedicine, as well as remote selling and customer services, one of the top new technologies that have just allowed and helped the recovery phase. And I think with the master plan, what we hope to see is that it will be helping governments to look at policies that will further accelerate the adoption. What we have seen is imagine a world that we did not have technology and connectivity, the impact of the pandemic would have been unimaginable. But I do believe that we are at a stage where we can now drive competitiveness and use the digital master plan as a foundation for the governments in the region to look at transformation, to accelerate transformation. The impact we do see is that with the with digitalization, the acceleration of digitalization, the emergence of the digital workforce has just quadrupled over the last 2 years. We see that the growth of digital workforce as national agenda across the region has helped people to keep their jobs, has further supported the gig economy. And with the master plan, I think with the focus of the master plan still very much anchored on people, we do see a huge impact, especially in creating new jobs and working across borders. What we do know with the pandemic and the opportunity is that there will be protracted disruption, more big data and faster decisions. And this is going to be an important component that I would like to talk about further in our discussion, deglobalization and contact-free economy. And I would like to focus on contact-free economy and more data and faster decisions. And these are the two of the big areas that is a major economic play in all of our economies across the region. Every country in ASEAN has focused on ensuring that their contribution of digital economy to GDP, with Indonesia looking at 60%, with Thailand looking at 30%, and with Malaysia looking at 22.5%, the role of digital economy contributing to GDP has also increased. And ASEAN, the master plan, has really a role to play here. And what I would like to further discuss in our discussion is to see how do we actually see this play out? What are the challenges and what are the opportunities while data localization and data residency continue to be a big barrier for entry? While data seem to be the driver, we see an opportunity for us to have a robust discussion with the policymakers. And I just talked about more data and faster decision. A lot of the governments have embraced technology, and I think Dr. Natapon talked about just the contact tracing and helping governments to trace and prevent the spread of the pandemic. And this is data-driven, and how do we now scale it and have it more seamless across ASEAN? And certainly innovation is underlying and has been core to making sure that we could actually use data and use technology to somehow constrict the spread of the pandemic within the nations. I talked about the rise of contact-free economy, and I think this is going to be a critical part of what ASEAN Master Plan, the ADM 2025, seeks to achieve. Digital commerce, e-commerce, and m-commerce will continue to grow. The role of telemedicine, I think, with technology and with people mobility becoming and borders opening up, telemedicine will become more central, and automation will become also an important part of our recovery agenda. I think all of the speakers before me spoke about security, and security has to be the underlying foundational in everything that we do when it comes to digital economy. And I think the focus for 2022, as shared by Dr. Natapon, clearly shows the weight on why cybersecurity, cyber resilience is going to be important as part of the overall recovery agenda for our governments. Privacy is the other area that we all look at, and it seems like the continuing season for privacy, as privacy continues to be a big agenda for all of our governments. And as shared earlier, the role of the personal data protection laws across the region has become even more critical at this time. And what we do see is that data has been used personal data has been used to ensure that we keep our citizens safe, but at the same time, data is also used to empower to power up the digital economy, so that the balance between the risk and opportunity continues to be a robust debate in both the public and the private sector. With that, my call to action, and one area that I would like to focus in the discussion today would be how do we focus on policy interoperability as part of the ASEAN the ADM 2025. I think that is going to be critical. Standalone siloed policies are not going to help us to realize the vision and objectives of ADM 2025. And I do hope that we could have a deep discussion around policy interoperability as an outcome of how we could realize the true vision of ADM 2025. Thank you. Over to you, Grant.
Well, that was great. Look, thank you very much. I was busily scribbling notes, and hopefully have picked up on some of your proposed topics that you'd like to return to, because I certainly think they are good ones for the panel. So thanks for that, those introductory remarks. Our last panelist is Darren Ong. Darren is Public Policy Manager APAC for Amazon. Darren manages the public policy efforts for Amazon consumer offerings, e.g. e-commerce, video streaming devices, etc., in various APAC countries, particularly those in Southeast Asia. So over to you, Darren, and we're expecting fantastic video and to be wowed by Amazon's quality. Nothing to set you up. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for setting me up for the expectations, Grant. Thank you to the IIC team for organizing this and for having me. As Grant has mentioned, I'm from the consumer side of Amazon businesses. So e-commerce, digital services, like Prime Video, the devices team and all. So supporting the public policy work for that part of Amazon. We also have another team that manages Amazon Web Services. Those are my colleagues who manage the cloud computing matters. So I think following on from the discussion so far, we've heard a lot about the different facets to growing digitally in Southeast Asia. I'd like to come in from a slightly different angle, in particular, looking at desired outcome 6, which really stood out for me because it says, digital services to connect business and to facilitate cross-border trade. So I'm hoping to use this short few minutes, talk about some Amazon examples and give you a glimpse of how things look on the ground, how a digital service like Amazon is helping to connect the businesses, helping to facilitate cross-border trade. What has been the experience for the companies in Southeast Asia? And it's a bit of an introduction. At Amazon, one of our business units is called Amazon Global Selling. It's got the mission to help local businesses sell to global customers. And we've got a customer base of 300 million plus active customers worldwide, of which 200 million are Prime members. And at the moment, we have about 2 million Amazon third-party sellers worldwide. So these are your small, medium enterprises from anywhere in the world selling the products on Amazon. And the sales from these sellers, these third-party sellers, actually account for more than half of everything that's sold on Amazon stores. The very significant growth that we've seen from the third-party sellers. And to better support them, over the course of 2020, we invested $18 billion to help these independent businesses have more tools, more services, more resources to better sell online. That's the broader global view. And if you look zoom in into Southeast Asia, based on some of the early learnings that we've gathered in places like Thailand and Malaysia, I think there's very encouraging growth. So in Thailand, from a 1-year period of September 2020 to August 2021, the average sales of Thai small and medium enterprises on Amazon increased by 25%. And in the same time frame, the number of Thai sellers that surpassed $1 million in sales grew by approximately 30% year on year. So we're seeing more people participate. We're seeing more of them sell at greater volumes, earn greater revenue. Look south a little to Malaysia, and the total sales from Malaysia sellers on Amazon has grown by more than 300% year on year. So they're starting from a very low base, but the pace of growth is encouraging. And I think that's where there's a lot of potential for the digital economy. To give you an even finer sense of what the experience is like for our local SMEs here, I've got some props with me. So no presentation, but we'll make do with this. So this, some of you might have seen this coffee before, Trung Nguyen coffee from Vietnam. Like now it's hard for us to travel to Vietnam, but customers through Amazon.com can purchase this, get a taste of Vietnam, and glad to learn that like a household brand in Vietnam, like Trung Nguyen coffee, is growing well internationally because of their ability to reach global consumers through Amazon. And in Singapore, I think we've got an interesting case where a company has managed to exploit their IP across different Amazon services. So starting with an animation called Oddbots, it was something which is available on Amazon Prime Video in a number of regions. Very cute animation. This is how one of the characters looks like. And building on that success of the animation, they started to have more merchandise that's sold on Amazon as well. And that just grew their fan base. And I think it's a very good example of how the digital realm allows us to just build on different layers of success. You find new ways to exploit the IP, the wonderful creations that the businesses have, and just grow that global fan base. But I should add that it's not all a straight path to success. It's not. It can be challenging, grappling with the different facets or factors involved. You have logistics, you have payments, you have advertising, you have listing, so many things to think about. And so there's a lot of work that can be done by both government and industry to sorry, it's got a call. There's more work that can be done by both industry and government to promote cross-border e-commerce, to promote digitalization, to increase the understanding of how this opportunity can be unlocked. Some of the efforts that we have been doing more recently has always been together with government support. And so over the last couple of months, we've organized annual seller summits, and we're very pleased to have high-level endorsements from government. Last month, we had Deputy Prime Minister Jurin in Thailand be our guest of honor, and in Malaysia and Singapore, likewise, we had the heads of several economic agencies join in and just share more about why local companies should be considering the e-commerce opportunity, why they should be thinking about expanding their scope beyond just the local brick and mortar realms. So that's if I can make a suggestion on areas for us to think about, it's how we can keep up this momentum, this echo of why it's important to think of the digital opportunity. And the more that we can do it together, I think the better the impact, because it's not going to be just a single message that's given that will convince the seller straight away. We need to just keep up this drumbeat. I think Jasmine just now also mentioned a very good point about needing simple, aligned regulations that avoid the silos. That's going to help as well, because if you want your sellers to be able to reach customers overseas easily, the simpler, the more aligned the regulations are, the easier it is for all businesses at all levels. And just final note, moving from e-commerce to digital entertainment, I think that's another area, another industry which can benefit. The Oddbots example, which I gave just now, was one where you can see a single company benefiting across different industries, finding that synergy. So at Amazon, we have the Prime Video streaming service. It's still very, very young and new in this region. It is a global service, offers films and series, but admittedly, we don't have any local content here. That said, in December last year, we announced that Prime Video is now looking to work with local storytellers here We want to develop original content from Southeast Asia. We want to bring it to consumers outside of the region through our global service. So we're very excited about what the future holds when it comes to physical products down to digital entertainment. And I hope this little show and tell gives you some insights on how things can happen at the various levels. So thank you very much, Grant. Back to you.
Thanks, CK, and thanks for your props. That certainly added some life to the discussion. Right, so that brings us to the end of the introductory comments and quite a range of different perspectives shared there. I'll just reiterate the messages that are coming forward to put questions, but I'm going to kick off, if I might, with some questions for the three panelists who come from the commercial sector. So my suggestion or my question first is, while ADM 2025 was developed largely through the input of member state governments by way of their different digital ministries, much of the delivery and the outcomes will be driven by the private sector. So I've got a number of questions here for our panelists from Axiata, Microsoft, and Amazon. First two questions, let me put those and then we'll see whether we get to the other two. First question I have is, how do you as businesses and your organizations engage with the master plan? Do you see your role as being shaped by the master plan or shaping the master plan? Are you guided or do you proactively seek to lead the delivery? So, as it were, the master plan exists, your businesses and their various corporate objectives exist. I'm interested to see and have you address how you, as a corporate, engage with the master plan. I'm going to ask if I might go first to CK and then to Jasmine and then back to you, Darren. If you just like to pick up on those things, and I invite you also to jump in on your fellow colleagues if you have a contribution to whatever point they're making, or if you want to ask them a particular clarifying question. So over to you, CK.
Sure. Thanks, Grant. Well, during drafting process of the ADM 25, Axiata, as with other private sector companies, you were given the opportunity to review some of the early drafts, and also, of course, give comments to how the final draft would look like. So we are grateful for the opportunity, and I think always believe that is the two-way consultation between private sector and policymakers is always always welcomed. I remember in the previous iteration of the ADM 25, which was the ASEAN ICT Master Plan, that process was not as robust as this current iteration. So when we saw the AIM 2015 and 2020, a lot of the programs and initiatives were perhaps there's a bit of misalignment to what we see on the ground. So for ADM 2025, I think we were quite happy that there was some conversation. So thank you very much to the people who drafted it and coordinated the work. As now we are into implementation phase, Grant. So the question then is, of course, how do private sector people like Axiata play a role in matching that and making that that framework into reality? So this is perhaps where, if I can seek the support from the policymakers and ASEAN Secretariat, who are custodians of the blueprint, to continue the engagement with us, because we have ideas of what we can do, what we can't do, right? And it's also good to be able to coordinate certain programs that we have with the objectives of the master plan. For example, design outcomes number 2 talks about broadband connectivity, both fixed and mobile. So, and we know that's a perennial issue, has always been there for years and years. So, of course, when we develop our business plans for different countries, right, we would like to be able to work together both at the local level, right, as well as across the region, to find out if we can make that work more efficient and more economically efficient. That's very important for us, because every dollar we put into the ground, we want to make sure that it gives the right return, and of course it also meets some of the demand patterns of the consumers today. So I think that conversation and implementation is very important. Fortunately, up to now, personally, I've not seen any alignment between private sector and the people pushing the master plan, the ASEAN Digital Master Plan 2025. So perhaps this could be one of the catalysts to start a conversation between both private and public sector, so that we can work together to achieve those objectives. Yeah. Thank you.
Great.
Back to you.
Okay, Jasmine, what and how does Microsoft engage?
I would say that we look at it from a two-pronged strategy. We do get involved in providing input in shaping the master plan, which is critical because we have businesses across the region and as we do across the world. So the engagement at the outset is critical for us. And, you know, it is a bit of a chicken and egg. Does technology shape policy or the policy shape technology? And I would say gone are the days where the policy shaped technology or policy shaped our environment. What we realize is that digital policies have to be grown organically. It cannot be, you cannot use an analog policy environment or analog policy and tweak it to turn it into digital. So I think the way we look at it is to how do we now look at digital native policies that actually has direct impact to the digital environment. And focus of the ADM is digital services. And we have citizens who are discerning and who are digital natives themselves. And while we see the master plan as an opportunity to have some kind of a policy interoperability across the region, but that is far from happening, right? That is not, that's still an aspiration and that is still a hope. What we do see as an opportunity is for us to see how could the policy be, how could ADM be actually operationalized in respective countries. What we do note is that they are all at different levels of maturity. Looking at Singapore versus looking at Myanmar, right? That they are all at different levels and at different levels of adoption and different levels of economic maturity. So the way we look at it is we do engage at the outset. We do see how far could the ADM be, the master plan could be used for local environment and how it could be localized. So the engagement is two-pronged. However, I do see an underlying opportunity across all of these countries, and that would be the skilling component. Capacity building is going to be central. And any of this master plan will only be as meaningful when it has impact on the people. Technology is merely an enabler, and I think a focus on the services to the people and enabling the people could be that cross-cutting where everyone has to agree that we want to enable the citizens of ASEAN. Hope that addresses your question.
Great, thank you very much. And Darren.
I'll just add a point that I think there are policies at all levels, and the ADM is the one that's high level, it's longer term. I personally do get some confidence and assurance from seeing that vision and knowing that it's a long-term vision, something which the countries are looking forward to implementing. But when you go further down, there are also various smaller policies which fit into the vision or try to achieve that vision. I think that's the area where more coordination between industry and government needs to happen, whether it's in terms of promoting and trying to achieve that vision, like how you offensively try and like just using desired outcome 6, right? How do you connect the businesses? How do you facilitate the trade? What are the issues that are blocking trade right now? How do we solve them? What is the perception from your local businesses about digital trade, and how do we correct any misunderstandings? how do we get them in the right headspace, down to thinking about whether proposed policies actually match that vision or will help deliver that desired outcome. So I think just that reflexive thinking at all stages of policy will be helpful. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Okay, I'm now going to switch a bit and have a question for Mr. Natasboom. And as our sole representative of a member of state government, I'm curious if you might just explain to us how ADM 2025 shapes or influences the government's digital program. I mean, it clearly for each member state, it has its own priorities, it has its own needs, and ADM 2025, I would think, is a kind of umbrella plan for each individual country. So I'm keen if you might explain to us how governments go about leveraging from or engaging with and building off the master plan.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. For the ASEAN country, I think it mainly depends on each country policy. But for ADM, we trying to make a collaboration between among each ASEAN member state. And we trying to put a program like project that we have the funding to do it together, to go together for every ASEAN member state. Mainly, I think we have more cooperation with other countries that outside ASEAN member states, like cooperation with Japan, also China, and also India. We also have a project with the other countries can help us on to go to the master plan, trying to go. We're trying to move together, not left someone behind. By using the project which we already have funding by our member states, and also we also have some other help from other countries, from both Japan, China, or India also.
Okay, can I just hold it there for a moment and go back to one of the comments that Darren just shared with us, the idea that the governments need to be more coordinated in their general digital policies. And correct me if I'm wrong there in what I gathered you said, Darren. And also, Jasmine, you made the point about policy decisions needing to grow organically, and I thought that was a really insightful view of the general strategy for governments to take on digital policy. So, Mr. Natasboom, what might you say to those two ideas? One, the idea of policy growing organically, and secondly, the need for greater coordination. Sorry, that was it. Oh, you got that? Okay.
Yes. Okay. And that. For the idea, I think we have many working groups that we are working together. So I think at the end of this year, we also have another meeting together as a working group. I think we try to do it together. Maybe Singapore can be a leader, or Malaysia can be a leader, but anyway, we go together as a plan that ADM 2025 has projected on.
Thank you. Back to our panelists from the commercial sector. I said I had a number of questions for you. My question this time is a very simple one. Do you find that the existence of the master plan is a help or a hindrance? And Darren, I'm going to start with you this time. Is it a help or a hindrance in achieving your commercial goals? And specifically, I guess I'm interested to understand, whether you expect government to fund all of its digital strategies, or are they looking for investment, looking at yourselves typically, in line with developing the master plan? And lastly, I guess another aspect of that would be, do you have any examples from your commercial world of projects or activities that your organizations have initiated that could be directly linked to enabling and progressing the actions identified and the objectives identified within the master plan? So, how do you find the master plan? Does it hinder or help? Who funds these things? And what's your, if you have an example of how your organization has specifically had a project that works with the master plan. Over to you, Darren, and then we'll go to Jasmine and CK.
Sure, I'll take a stab at it. And just to clarify on an earlier point about coordination, I was thinking of it more as an opportunity for us to work together even more. And the example that comes to mind is, for the first time, we on the Amazon side, we commissioned a study to look into the e-commerce export potential for Thai businesses. That, to the best of our knowledge, there was no research in that area before, so we wanted to get a sense of it. And using that research, we organized a roundtable. We brought in various government agencies, including representatives from MDES. So it was the first time we had such a collection of stakeholders in a room talking about a topic. And I think this is just an example of where there can be more of such conversations, more potential coordination. Now, and then Grant, to your questions about whether it hinders or helps, for me, I would think it definitely help. How much help, that I think that may change. It's up to us also, right? But having that vision gives us confidence. I think in that sense, I always think it's helpful. And in terms of funding, I actually never thought of it that way, because we buy into some of the desired outcomes too. And so it's very natural for us to want to really support this. And just now I mentioned about the investment that Amazon made to supporting local businesses, which was to the tune of 18 billion in 2020. So I think very organically, borrowing Jasmine's term, we are already doing that. But the potential, like how far we can go, how much help we can, how much of a help we can make this ADM, that's the question mark. That's really up to us to push. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Jasmine.
I agree with Darren. It provides a platform. How do we use it is entirely up to us, and how do we and it's very issues based. Some issues, the ADM platform provides us a leverage for us to go and present and further support some of the notion that we want to put forward to our governments, especially when it comes to free flow of data across the region, which continues to be a challenge. But I do see I do see this as an opportunity for us, the private sector, to work closely, not only with our respective governments, but ASEAN as a platform. And especially if I could share one example, capacity building for young people across the region is something that we have continued to do, and we have contributed, and we have made it especially available as part of our recovery, in supporting the recovery agenda across the region. We have continued to work with ASEAN Foundation as well. So for me, that is an example of, one is issues based, how we leverage the platform. It's still work that has to be done in country, and it goes back to, therefore it goes back to my original argument why it has to be, there has to be policy interoperability, and there has to be also that desire to organically focus to have that digital policies to be grown organically. Right now, what we see is that very traditional way of policy making continues, where governments, respective ministries go out to do policies, and it seems like a digital policy then is sort of a bolt on, where it cannot work like that, because healthcare will never become will now become a horizontal. You know, that we need it to always be vertical. It has to be one where we need to see how we can push the agenda, and how do we allow for the integration of technology across all of these different verticals. So that is where I see the opportunity.
Great. Look, I just picked up on your statement again about policy interoperability. I like that. I'm going to adopt that, I think, because I can share with you that as we developed the master plan, there was often times when you could clearly see a particular policy, well, the potential for particular policy implementation to cut across or even undermine another policy intention. And we worked hard to try and, you know, smooth that out and to put the pieces of the jigsaw such that they fitted together and didn't just, you know, come up with a random pattern. So I've noted that policy interoperability. I think it's a good call. Right, CK.
Yeah, well, thanks, Grant. Well, your question on whether the master plan is a help or a hindrance, of course, is a help, and I fully agree to that. The challenge, perhaps, if I may be a bit contrary, is actually taking the plans that has been articulated in the master plan. So it's actually, if you look at the master plan, is a fantastic document, but it remains as a framework document. That means to bring is actually a 10,000 in lingo that we use is actually a 10,000 feet document. So to translate that into actionable items and for those initiatives to be implemented on ground in the different markets, right, in different countries, is a 3-feet plan. We need a 3-feet plan. So translating it from a high level, you know, framework kind of lingo to something which is workable and is in bite size, and that is where people like us can grab onto it, because, you know, let me give you an example. Right? So desired outcome number 2.5 in the master plan, right? It says that this 2.5 is to reduce the carbon footprint of telecommunication operators in ASEAN. Just one sentence. It's fantastic, because we totally agree. We need, as a telecom sector, we need to reduce our carbon footprint. This is a no-brainer, right? But it remains in document, just a one-liner thing. Maybe it's a description of what it is, but to be able to implement it, and where we can put our hooks onto the actual issue and play a role in, you know, that is where we need to translate that plan from a 10,000 feet high level plan to a 3-feet plan, which is easy to understand and comprehend and actionable. That is where maybe, you know, working groups or whatever could be formed if they're not done already, and to translate these goals into manageable sizes, and so that we can think about how we can contribute better and look into the whole issue of co-funding or co-planning. That's where we think we can take it to the next step. Yeah. Hope that answers your question. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great. Don't go. I've been looking at your pyramid slide. I like the idea of the way you've diagrammatically shown the layered digital economy, although I'm not sure it's necessarily the way I would have the pyramid. I think looking at your pyramid, I would invert it such that the enabling of applications and services is at the top and much larger than the connectivity and platforms, etc., which support and enable those services. But leaving that aside, my question is, where would you see that the master plan should focus on the different levels that you've identified there? Where in your view should the focus be from the master plan? Where's the most impact going to be achieved? What would be the priority?
Well, I can speak from the perspective of a telecoms operator because that's where our bread and butter is. Of course, Jasmine and Darren have their priorities, but for us, DO2 is actually quite important. That is the whole section talking about how to improve quality and coverage of fixed and mobile infrastructure connectivity, right? So under that umbrella, there are about 9 different sub-initiatives. So that is where I think, if you ask me, I think for us, and I don't know whether my colleagues who are joining the forum today would agree, amongst the biggest difficulties or challenges telecom operators have today is, at least for mobile, is on spectrum. As I mentioned in my opening, for the last 2 years, our networks have been severely loaded. In fact, some of our networks have, in terms of demand, the demand has spiked from our consumers, right? So, in fact, year on year, we see it going 100%. That means double the number of traffic, double the gigabytes traveling to our network from one year to another year. That is tremendous because our networks are not built to handle such a surge in demand, in capacity. So, and we don't see this abating because when lockdowns happened and the close and lockdowns cease, the demand patterns do not fall. That means they do not come back to before COVID days, so, which means to us that the consumers are quite comfortable with working in a hybrid or online environment. So that pattern of behavior continues and is causing a lot of challenges even for us, of course, as we need to make our networks viable, right? We don't want our consumers to be unhappy and leave us. Also for the policymakers and regulators, they'll say, yeah, we have so many complaints, your quality is terrible, please improve, right? So the solution for that long term is to make sure more spectrum is made available for mobile broadband. That is and that is a no-brainer, because when we see our networks, some places they are loaded to the maximum. Some metro areas, we cannot build sites anymore because they're too close. So it means that we need to build another additional layer of mobile infrastructure, 4G or 5G, on top to absorb the traffic and build capacity. So that means more spectrum. And most countries, especially in the West, even Australia and New Zealand, where you are, the governments there recognize that spectrum is the lifeblood, and they have worked, of course, progressively over the many years to ensure more spectrum is freed up. It's actually a long process. It's a painstaking and long process. It takes 10, 15 years, 20 years to get global harmonization and making sure that the spectrum is made available for use, commercial use. So there's no better time than the start now. In fact, when we scan across our markets, some countries, when we look into the heat map, what's called spectrum heat map, or some places are in trouble because there's just to give you an example, one country in ASEAN has, I think, about 30% or 25% of total spectrum of Australia or New Zealand, for example. So there's a huge gap between the haves and the have-nots. And is where the have-nots, there we are finding that the consumers there actually depend more and more on mobile as the primary source of connectivity, not on fiber, which is fixed network, which is more commonly available in developing markets. So for us, number one is spectrum, and we're happy to note that in the ADM 25, spectrum harmonization features quite strongly, 2.7. Is it not 2.7? 2.6. So I would love to be able to work with policymakers to flesh it out and translate it from 10,000 feet to a 3 feet high plan. Yeah. Hope that helps answer your question. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Nathasombun, I'm going to come back to you possibly for some closing remarks, but we'll get to that in a minute. Your presentation was packed, if I might say, with really interesting information and initiatives which you've noted. And a number of the speakers have noted the importance of putting people at the center of the strategy, and you picked up particularly on the issues of skilling and upskilling and reskilling, and also the issues of trust in cybersecurity, etc. I just wondered if you might just take just a few minutes just to talk about how you see the ADM 2025 addressing those, and how you, I guess, have leveraged off that in your government work. And by the way, if you wish to address CK's call, the perennial call from mobile operators for more spectrum, feel free to address that as well.
Okay.
Over to you, Mr. Nattaswamy.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. I think one of my issues on my presentation is how to build the capacity building of ASEAN people to scale up that skill. This is very important, you know, especially in many countries like our neighboring country nearby Thailand. You know, many people, they still have less knowledge. Now, people may think that we already have 5G in many countries of ASEAN country, but how we can use or maximize the use of the technology. Now we may already have 5G, but we use 5G as a maybe 3G or 4G already, just only 3G or 4G, but we don't maximize the use of 5G. As CK mentioned, in many areas, we may need to have a very high capacity in some area, but in many areas, capacity may be redundant in some area. How can we optimize the use of this infrastructure? Like in Thailand, we have so many poles. If you come to Thailand, we have more than 30,000 poles for 5G. You know, that is redundant. How can we optimize the use of this infrastructure? This is a key issue. Otherwise, many countries we invest, everybody want to invest, and then you don't use it. You cannot use it or optimize the use of this infrastructure and also the technology that we have. So I think the first key issue is we need to make them know how to use it first, to teach them know how to use it. Otherwise, the new technology that come in will be worthless, because people still stuck with the old technology because they don't know which channel they're gonna go. Now, e-commerce may be very popular, especially in Thailand, as Darren mentioned. You know, but 5G or the new technology is worth more than that. It's not just only e-commerce. Like I mentioned, that we can use the 5G as the smart to make our city smarter, to make a smart city safer, or make the hospital. When we use AI in the hospital, we need 5G, or maybe we need something more or higher technology. So I think to make people in this region know how to use it, or to learn how to use this new technology, is a key point that many countries in our ASEAN country need to educate our people.
Sorry, there we are, off mute. Thank you very much. We are just about out of time, so I've got a very quick question and a very quick answer from you all, if I may. The ADM 2025 was adopted January 2021, so it's about 1 year into its 5-year delivery. Very simple, give it a rating out of 10 as to how you think it has been influential in advancing ASEAN digitally. That's the first score you're going to give me. And secondly, how what is your aspiration, 1 out of 10, for ADM 2025 to carry ASEAN forward in the next 4 years with the challenges that we all face globally? So there's the two ratings I'm going to ask you to give, and I'm going to start with Darren, seeing he was the last man on the team to speak, and we'll end up with Mr. Nadazumbum. So Darren, what's your score?
Oof. I am going to be a little cheeky and just say it's a 6 for now, just because we're only getting started. But I hope that we go up by 1 every year, which will bring us to 10 by 2025, I hope.
Oh, what an answer. Lovely. Jasmine.
Darren took the diplomatic answer, so I need to have so I would like to rate it at an early 3 at the first year, right? Given that I think our focus in the last 2 years, most of our governments were just trying to keep their people alive. They were not looking at the digital master plan. However, with the endemic coming into place, we have an opportunity to revisit and see how we can operationalize. So I do hope at the end of 2025, we will be at least at a 9, 8 or 9. But I do think the governments were busy trying to just save their economies and keep people alive. I think that was the 2 primary focus in the last 2 years. And I think we are now, at least there's a tiny sigh of relief, and I think governments would now accelerate in the next 2 years to end strong in 2025. Thank you.
Excellent. CK, just 2 numbers from you, please.
2.5 now, and I think even 9 at the end of the period. Yeah, I'm quite bullish about what the ADM 25 could do for the region.
Excellent. And the last call, Mr. Nadazumbum, what do you think?
I quite agree with Jasmine, because now many countries in our region trying to focus on how to recover from COVID-19. So today, I think as the plan, maybe 1.5, and now it may end up maybe 6 as the best.
Oh, wow. Okay, but all of you gave it a rating on an opportunity, as we would say, an opportunity for improvement. Look, that's the end of our time. Let me thank you, each panelist, for your contribution.